That's cool.
He'll get Mike up here and he's going to take our picture. So everybody give him a great big go smile.
All right, guys, I'm going to get your photo real fast here in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. 10.
Perfect, thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. All right, so yeah, there are a couple of those classes you go to pay. The first one is right here when the light's shining. The second one is down just a bit. I will shine my light ahead of time to let you know there's a low spot coming up.
I'll just take a picture.
And there's the first low spot.
I'm ducking.
I think that's second low spot.
No, your head doesn't do that. I know, but you're fine. Well, usually you two, there's just
So we're got some sinkhole down here, over the bridge.
All right.
Sinkhole down here.
Again, welcome to Fantastic Caverns. If you're not aware of it, you're on the only ride through cave in North America. In fact, there's only 4 worldwide. There's one in France, there's one in Slovenia, one in Barbados, and France, and this one. Did I say that? France, Barbados, Slovenia, yeah, and this one. That's 4. That's 4. Okay. All right. So
Does
that's
Mermaid Caverns have a right through?
huh?
Does Mermaid Caverns have a right
No,
through?
no. We are the only one in North America.
I thought Mermaid Caverns.
Nope, we are the only one in North America that has right there. So that does make this a rather unique experience. Now, one of the reasons why I stopped here is back in the 1930s, during a time called the Depression, there were no jobs and nobody had any money. So the owner of the cave at that time had to figure out a way to pay his bills. And he came up with this idea to grow a crop down here in the cave, harvest his produce, take it to Springfield, sell it, put money in his pocket. Any thoughts on what it was he could grow down here?
Mushrooms.
Exactly, mushrooms, little button top mushrooms. They say he grew those because he was just such a fun guy. This is the last of several mushroom beds that he had throughout the cave, and we preserved one of the last of several. And it was a very good idea, and it got him through those hard times. So, now if you look up here at the ceiling, you're going to see all these little things hanging down. These are what we call soda straws. And we call them that because they grow in a hollow tube-like shape, just like a drinking straw. And that's how most of the formations in the cave start out. And that happens when the water on the surface finds its way down through the bedrock and the limestone, and it works its way down into the cave. As that water travels, it picks up minerals along the way. And the primary mineral it picks up is calcite. So the water carries the calcite into the cave, the water eventually evaporates, it leaves the calcite behind, and that is how our formations grow. And we will go up ahead and see what these little guys look like when they've grown up some. But first, I kind of like to go over this because I think it's interesting. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, all this was underwater. There was an ocean all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes and beyond. And it was filled with fish and sea creatures and such. And when they die, their bones, teeth, shells, and what have you go floating to the bottom. You get enough of those bones, teeth, shells, and what have you compressed over time, you get what we call limestone today. And if you look up at the ceiling, you may not notice it at first, but upon looking, you'll see fossils everywhere. They're everywhere, little tiny aquatic fossils. See all those? See all the fossils in the ceiling? Yeah. Do y'all ever go to the rivers and creeks and you find these rocks that look like screws or bolts, like that one or like that one? Do y'all ever find those? Anybody? Well, if you do, they're crinoid fossils. And that is the Missouri state fossil. Did anybody know that?
No.
So everybody learned something today? Okay. I found a shark's tooth over there once. Well, you know, they did find a whale skeleton in the Sahara Desert, too. Isn't that interesting? All right, we're going to go on over to the next stop. Yeah, I found a shark tooth over there. There's one in Texas that is 70 degrees all year round. All right, if you look up to the ceiling, you're going to see some more of these soda straws. And they will grow somewhere between 6 and 10 inches long. And then at that point, that calcite will begin to clog up that hollow area, and the water will start to drip down around it, forming what we call stalactites. And that's what all these are, they're tight to the ceiling. Now, this particular stalactite that my light's on, it's kind of special because of the formation it makes. It has its own name. And this is what they call cave curtains or cave drapery. And it makes this type of formation like this right here because the ceiling's kind of slanted, so it causes the water to drip down at an angle, leaving behind what looks like curtains or drapes. And if you watch, as that water continues to drip, it'll drip down here to the ground. That calcite will start growing upward, forming what we call a stalagmite. It might grow to reach the ceiling. Some of you young ones, that's a good way to remember that. Stalactite holds tight to the ceiling. Stalagmite might grow to reach the ceiling. When I was 6 years old, my folks took me to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. And I always remember the tour guide saying that, and that stuck with me all these many years. So it's a good way to remember it, yes. It's just a brick, it's a marker for where we park. If you want to know what the brick was over there, we have markers to know where we park. It takes a little bit of skill to drive through the cave, and park in the right place, so we don't get scratched up. All right, so now these two formations are lined up where they could possibly grow together someday and form what we call a column or a pillar. That's going to take a little while. They've estimated that the average rate of growth of the formations in our cave is approximately 1 cubic inch per 100 years. So that's going to take a day or two. All right, we're going to go on up.
Really? So how long has it been a long time ago? So do they turn them off when they're done?
formation that we call flowstone. And that happens when the water seeps in through the layers of the limestone and drifts down. And different colors in the cave are just due to different minerals. This has a lot of iron in it, it's got a little rust color going on. Calcite's pure white, but it's the minerals that give the cave its color. Now, we're going to talk about this right here for a bit, the lights on. This is not a cave formation. This really should not be in our cave, yet here it is. What this is a well casing. Now, how did a well casing get in our cave? Well, in 1941, there was a farmer that lived up top and he wanted water. So he needed to dig a well. He knew the cave was here. He did not want to cause any damage. So he walked around up top and he measured and he scratched his head and calculated. Decided if he was to put it right there, it would miss the cave altogether. Oops, he miscalculated by about 10 feet. He wanted it on the other side of the cave wall. Well, when they realized they hit the cave, they came down to see how much damage was done. They took a look at it and they thought, you know what? It's out of the way. Let's just leave it alone because it was going to cause more damage to try to pull it out. So that's what they did. They left it. And then they thought, well, since we're down here anyway, let's go ahead and drill down another 50 feet. So they did. They hit water and everything turned out to be quite well. That's the last one. So, all right. Now, this, through the years, the cave has kind of embraced this and given them a nice coat of calcite. Because when it first came through here, it was solid black cast iron. So the cave is coated it with its own calcite. Anyway, with every mistake, you can learn something, and this is no exception. If you look up top where the well casing came through the ceiling, you see these ridged areas going back behind you. Those are the start of some new cave formations. Some cave curtains or cave drapery, just like we saw back there. These formations started growing in 1941 when the well casing came through. So according to our calculations, those baby formations up there are 84 years old this year. Now, we've measured the growth along that ridged area at the longest point to be 3/4 of an inch. This is where we get that estimated rate of growth. If it took 84 years to grow 3/4 of an inch, stands to reason it would take about 100 to grow an inch. But think about that, 84 years to grow this much. With that in mind, think how old these brown curtains are in front of us. Of course, we have no idea how old they are. The official tour guide handbook says they're very, very old. So we'll go with that. Now, did y'all notice these things hanging down that look like strings up here? Those are tree roots that have traveled down this well casing 90 feet in search of water. So we are 90 feet below the surface right here at this point. We've gone underneath the parking lot, we've gone underneath the county road that you came in on, and we are going into the side of the hill. So we're not really going down, the land's actually going up on top of us. So, all right, we're going to go on up here. As we go forward, behind this brown curtain is a beautiful example of a column or a pillar. Be sure to check that out. I personally think it looks like a giant ear of corn. Look at it and see what you think. No? Hear the water? Water's draining out here. Well, you know, basically we're in the planet's plumbing. We're in the Earth's drain system. Because that's what a cave is. It's a drain. And we had a lot of rain this last week, so it's draining the water. And we'll see here in a minute. Now, this cave was discovered in 1862 by a man named John Knox. Mr. Knox was out hunting with his dog, Juno. Y'all may have noticed the statue of a dog in our pavilion on your way down to the visitor center. That's dedicated to Juno the bloodhound. Anyway, they're out hunting and Juno chases a small animal into a small hole in the side of the hill. Well, Mr. Knox goes to call for Juno and Juno didn't come out. But Mr. Knox could hear Gino, he could hear his dog whining and whimpering. Well, Mr. Knox was pretty fond of his dog, so he goes back to his house, he gets himself a candle or a lantern. They did not have flashlights back then. And he goes to that hole where his dog went in. Now this is a very small hole. So Mr. Knox, he gets down on his belly and he does that army belly crawl, and he crawls in there for several feet, and then everything opens up for him. And at that point he realized he had himself a cave on his property. Well, he finds Gino and he gets his dog and takes his dog back home, and I'll get to the rest of that story here in a little bit. But Gino was whining and whimpering because he wandered into an area so dark he'd never experienced before. And he probably lost his sense of direction and couldn't find his way out. So I'm going to show you what Gino experienced. If everybody would be so kind as to make sure all your lights are totally dark on all your devices. On 3, 1. If you think you might get scared, just close your eyes. 1, 2, 3. And that is the absence of light. And your eyes will not adjust. If you need to pick your nose or make any adjustments, now's the time to do it. Now, the first, and then there's only 2 places on earth you get this kind of darkness, and that is at the bottom of the ocean floor and in a cave. Now, the first folks that came to the cave, they would have used a candle or a lantern. It would have been about that much light. Now, that's pretty bright in total darkness. I would not want to explore the cave this way. But in 1887, we were introduced to something very special, the Edison bulb. Now, in 1887, this was some amazing technology. This is like something from the future. And Fantastic Caverns had a steam-powered generator, and it would generate electricity and power the lights here in the cave. Now, mind you, this is several years before they had electricity in Springfield. So people would come from all over, they would stand in line, they would camp out to get out here to the cave. But they weren't coming to see the cave. They were coming to see this new invention, the light bulb. That was the big attraction, was the light bulb. They'd never seen anything like that before. And they did use that generator up until the early 1900s. Then they switched to a Delco battery system. Sometime after that, they got electricity put in down here, and they had an expert in theater lighting come through. And he said, you know, in your cave, you don't want to hang the lights from the ceiling. He said, if you shine them up from below, that's going to be able to show the beauty and the definition of the cave. And I'll show you what he meant by that. It really shows up on this wall here. This is the way they used to see the cave. That's what we see it today. So what a difference. All right, we're going to go on up ahead, and we're going to stop on top of what's called a depression in the cave. If we were on the surface, it would be called a sinkhole. We're going to talk about the starting point of the cave to the ending point of the cave. See, on the tour, we see a little over a mile of the cave. However, the cave is actually about 3.5 miles long. And I'll explain that in here. We're going to cross over a smaller depression, and we'll stop at the big one.
Imagine getting lost in total darkness 3.5 miles in.
It's a lot of crawling.
Yeah.
There's water in there.
At this point, you're going to stand up and get a better view. You're more than welcome to. So, the fantastic system is a dual Well, he gets Juno back home and everything, and then Mr. Knox goes back to that hole that he crawled in, and he covers it up. And he doesn't tell anybody, not even his own family, about his discovery of the cave. He just kept that to himself, and he went on about his business. Well, a few years went by, and he got to thinking, this cave really ought to be explored. Well, he really wasn't up to doing it himself, so he put an ad in the Springfield paper asking for somebody with some experience to come explore the cave. And on February 27, 1867, the Springfield Athletic Club shows up out here. And they are the first ones to explore Fantastic Caverns. Now, the Springfield Athletic Club is kind of a unique group, especially for their time. And I'll put it to you this way. I would love to see the expression on Mr. Knox's face when they knocked at the door and he opened it to see standing in front of him 12 young women. So ladies, this cave was first explored by girls, and you can applaud that if you like. Show those girls some love. You know, if you think about it, that's really quite remarkable because in that day and age, that was not common for women to be out doing such things. So it was pretty remarkable, yeah. And they thought it was pretty remarkable too. So they left their names on the wall, and we're going to backtrack, and I'll point that out to you. And then we're going to stop in what we call the auditorium area for a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Now behind the screen, the cave goes back another 160 feet or so, and it just narrows down to a clay wall back in there. If you are interested in the layout of the cave, there is a diagram that's hanging on the wall in the gift shop area. It shows the airport, the sinkholes, the upper level, the lower level. And if you already looked at it, if you look at it again after being in the cave, it will make more sense to you. So let's go check out those ladies' names. Now I'm going to back up this address. Mr. Knox discovered this cave in 1862. However, he did not place that ad in the paper until 1867. He waited for 5 years. The reason behind that is the American Civil War was going on. And Mr. Knox knew if word got out that he had a cave, either the Union or the Confederate Army would come through and take it. Both armies were in this area at that time. Both armies were actively seeking out caves. One of the things they were looking for were caves that had a lot of bat guano. Do any youngins know what bat guano is? You know? Anybody? Kids? Well, it's bat poop. That's what it is. That's what they were looking for. And what they would do is they would come in these caves, they would dig up soil that contained, here with my water bottle, that contained bat droppings. And then they would take that soil and they would put it in these large vats called leaching vats. And then they would take water, they would run it over the top of that soil, that water would run down through the soil, and it would come out down here in the form of a muddy slurry. And that was a process called leaching out the minerals. Then they would take that muddy slurry and they would start cooking it. And they would cook it in large kettles that they would place outside out the mouth of the caves where they would put those. And they would cook that all day long. At the end of the day, when all the water had finally cooked away, what they were left with were these crystals that stuck to the sides and the bottom of the pot. Those crystals contain something called potassium nitrate, also referred to as saltpeter. And they took those crystals and crushed them up, mixed it with potash and sulfur. They came up with gunpowder. And gunpowder was something that was in high demand during that time period. So in my opinion, Mr. Knox was a very wise man, keeping his discovery of the cave quiet until after the war had ended, because they would have surely destroyed the cave. Now, fast forward to the 1920s, during a time in our country called Prohibition, when the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages was outlawed throughout the land. Somebody said, well, that doesn't mean underneath the land, and they thought this would be a great place for a bar. So they put in an illegal speakeasy down here, and they kicked up their heels for about 3 years, till they got shut down. They had a bar that ran underneath that rock, they had a dance floor, they had gaming tables, and they had themselves a good old time for a little while. And then now, fast forward to the 1960s, they built the stage, and they started having underground concerts down here. They had a weekly variety show on Saturday nights called Farmerama. And on occasion, they would invite some of the big names of country music to perform down here. They would record the show and air it on NBC radio later that week. And that went on for a number of years. But the acoustics are absolutely amazing down here. If you're familiar with Branson, Missouri, there's a group down there called the Presleys. And this is where they got their start, was on this stage right down here. So there's been a lot of activity in the cave in the last 100 years. All right, we're going to go up. We're going to see a part of the cave you have not seen yet. The ceiling is going to get rather low through here, so watch your heads. breakdown area. Called the breakdown area. That's all these rocks that broke down used to be up on the ceiling. Basically what happened in here, when it was the land before time and the water was running through here carving out the cave, the water level would rise and fall and it would saturate the limestone. Over time, it saturated it so much, it caused it to collapse. And there are three areas you can see where the rock broke away. The first one is right through here where my light's shining. The second would be that shelf right above that. And the third is up here on the ceiling, where it looks like a big shoe print. So it broke away in tiers like this, leaving a dome shape, which does prevent any future collapse. Now, if you have any concerns, if you look up here where my light's shining, oh, Atlas, he's been holding that ceiling up for thousands of years. That's what they fall on his head. So, in case you're wondering, you heard that Jeep over there, on the other side of that's where we have a picture taken. And, you know, I spend a lot of time down here, so I see a lot of things. But doesn't that look like the back of the TV up there? Now, some folks may come through here and think, well, it looks like an earthquake caused this. Well, it looks like it, but it didn't. But I will tell you this, the worst earthquakes that hit North America hit about 300 miles southeast of here, along the Boot Hill. It's along what they call the New Madrid Fault Line. This earthquake is so severe, it's been said it made the Mississippi River run backwards for 2 days. It was felt as far north as Washington, D.C., as far south as South America. As severe as that earthquake was, there's no evidence it did anything inside this cave. In fact, scientists will tell you a cave can be a very safe place to be during an earthquake. They also say another earthquake of that magnitude could hit in this area again at any time. Now, if that were to happen, and say you all are in the area, well, come on back to Fantastic Caverns. The scientists say you're fine. I said scientists say. That's what the scientists say. All right, we're going to go on up ahead. I think it's one of the prettiest areas of the cave. As you go through, you look up at the ceiling. It is the highest concentration of stalactites in the cave. Well, it's very pretty.
Look at that big one over
Very pretty.
Yeah, I know, I saw it and no. Look at all the behind it. Look at this.
All right, now we'll turn the lights on for you in just a moment. I'm going to show you something. We know young ladies, I think if I told you they were young too, they were ages 13 to 19. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. But when they came to explore the cave, they would have used what I call an Ozark flashlight. And that consists of a coffee can with a handle attached and a candle in it. And this is kind of light they would have used to explore the cave. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our very own Ozark flashlight. I'm going to walk down this trail over here so you all can kind of get a feel or have some idea of what that experience may have been like for those young women back in 1867. And then I'll turn the lights on for you. So, splunking I will go. If you're not familiar with the term splunking, that's another way of saying cave exploring. General idea here. Those girls are pretty brave. This is pretty much how they saw the cave. They explored it in 1867. This is the way they saw it back then. And this is where we get to see it and enjoy it today. This is the area we call the Hall of Giants. These are the largest formations in the cave. We call these two the twins. Of Now, congratulations to those of you sitting on the left for not hitting your head. Yeah. I said yeah. The lowest part of the cave is going to be right through here. And it's going to get just a couple inches over the top of my teeth. So y'all can play a little game we call cave limbo. See how low you go. Now, at this point, you still do not know the person sitting across from you. Now would be a good time to introduce yourself. So there's names up in the left.
Planned out One time I will be in short.
Agreed.
When Lord showed you, that's the formation you see on all the billboards. You're fine.
I did that.
You're fine. Alright, so the last place I want your head is going to be this overhang as we exit the cave.
Get it back.
Wait, I thought it was hang on a second.
Oh, she locked the
I got
door.
next up a few inches.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
When we get outside here, I'm going to show you the hole where the cave is discovered.
Sunshine. Thank you, Lord.
It's cool though, huh?
Hang on a minute until I get.
Last person on the wagon's gotta close the door.
Yeah.
Should've sat in the back. There goes.
No, we did get wet.
Yeah.
Where the girls went in, Mr. Knox went in, it's right here where my light's shining. That's the hole. And back in the day, that hole probably started somewhere up here. That's where they went in.